You're listening to EFT Radio Online, where we explore meridian tapping techniques for self-help and peak performance. By listening to this audio, you agree to the disclaimer located at eftradioonline.com/disclaimer. If you'd like to get the schedule of all the upcoming EFT radio shows and access to archive shows, please visit us at eftradioonline.com, where you can subscribe to our free newsletter.
Are your limiting beliefs preventing you from reaching your full potential? Are your income, relationships, and quality of life affected by your lack of confidence, clarity, and inspiration? There is a better way. Welcome to Clarity Power Results. If you're ready to break free from the anchors weighing you down, join me, your host, Empowerment Mentor, Stephenie Farrell. I'll answer your questions on setting and reaching your goals, building more self-awareness, and reaching your full potential. On the show, I'll guide you through exercises, tap-alongs, and meditations designed to make you feel centered, clear, and inspired. And I'll bring you expert guests to help you break free from those anchors and become your personal and professional best. Welcome to Clarity Power Results. This is your host, Stephenie Farrell. I've got a very special guest for you today. It's Gabrielle Bernstein. Gabrielle is the #1 New York Times best-selling author of The Universe Has Your Back. She was featured on Oprah's Super Soul Sunday as a next-generation thought leader, and the New York Times named her a new role model. She appears regularly as an expert on the Dr. Oz Show and co-hosted the Guinness World Record largest meditation with Deepak Chopra. Gabby has presented lectures at Google, TEDx Women, Oprah's Super Soul Sessions, the Chopra Center, the Omega Institute, L'Oreal, Philosophy, and the Huntington Post. I was fortunate enough to have a conversation with Gabrielle a few days back about her new book, Judgment Detox: Release the Beliefs That Hold You Back from Living a Better Life. I hope you enjoy this special interview with Gabrielle and that her book, Judgment Detox, will touch you as deeply as it has me. Gabrielle, I'm thrilled to have you on the show today, and I love your new book, Judgment Detox: Release the Beliefs That Hold You Back from Living a Better Life, and I encourage everyone out there to get a copy for themselves and for a friend and family member. I just know it's going to help so many people.
Thank you.
Gabrielle, your new book is based on the spiritual principles of A Course in Miracles. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about A Course in Miracles and about your journey as a teacher of the Course?
Well, I've been a student of A Course in Miracles since 2005, when I was introduced to my now dear friend and mentor, Marianne Williamson. At the time, I was introduced to Marianne's books and then found the Course through her teachings. Through Marianne's beautiful interpretation of the Course, it was really clear to me that I was being called to translate those principles for the next generation. And at the time, I was 25 years old, so I was starting to teach spiritual principles for a new generation of seekers. I have since published 6 books, and in all of those books have incorporated principles of the Course throughout them, and it's been a beautiful through line throughout my work. And to simply explain the intention of A Course in Miracles, it's a metaphysical text based on the experience of forgiveness. So through the experience of forgiveness, we can get closer to our connection to a higher power of our own understanding. And those principles are a through line not only in my life, but also throughout my work.
Beautiful. Why now, Gabrielle? Why did you feel it was important now to write a book on judgment?
When I was writing my last book, which came out a year ago, it's called The Universe Has Your Back. I wrote a chapter in that book about healing our relationship to judgment to get closer to our connection to the universe. Mm-hmm. And when I finished writing that chapter, I looked at the computer screen and I was like, this is an entire book. I really have to commit to this. So it was clear to me there was a much, much bigger body of work around that topic, at which point I contacted my publishers, sold the book. Right as I finished my Universe Has Your Back launch, I went right into writing this book, Judgment Detox, because it was almost like it had to come out at this time. I was also right in the middle of the 2016 election when I was writing the book, so it was at a very divisive time in the world. I was obviously feeling the triggers and the heat of that, as everyone else was, regardless of who you voted for or what side politically you may have felt you were on. And witnessing this heated debate of division happening all throughout the world in a much even greater way than I'd ever seen made it even more clear to me that it was time for us to begin to resolve our judgmental patterns so that we could begin to live in a happier, more peaceful way, personally and globally.
Can you tell us about your own personal journey to heal your relationship with judgment?
So writing this book has been, I think that actually whenever I write my book, the universe laughs, and it's like, God's up there saying, like, here's our next assignment, sweetie. So I think that was definitely the case with this book particularly, because I write I teach what I need to learn. And throughout the process of writing this book, I was having a lot of great learning assignments and spiritual opportunities for growth and healing. Many, many moments of realizing, first and foremost, what judgment was doing to me emotionally, spiritually, physically, creatively. The moment that I started to practice the first step in this book, the first step is called Witness Your Judgment Without Judgment. The moment I began practicing that, even that first step, I started to acknowledge the effect that judgment was having on my life. And so it was really clear to me that I had work to do. And thankfully, I was willing to do that work and willing to be brave enough to wonder what was living beneath those judgmental patterns, because through my willingness to go there and to explore and to get into it, I was able to write from a very authentic place. And I was able to also apply the principles in my own life and now today be able to testify to them because I've lived them. That's the blessing of being able to really need the work that you're teaching. And so you can then come out of the other side and say, yeah, it works. I did it. And I'm proud to say I've had great miracles from it. So, I've had a lot of great personal experiences, and I write about them all throughout the book. Experiences of when I was writing this book, I ended one of my closest friendships. I dealt with family issues, judgment-wise. I've had one of the biggest judgments I've ever dealt with professionally ever. That came up while I was writing this book. A really deep-rooted shame I had to face deep-rooted shames in order to write this book. So being willing and ready to detox from judgment means you're ready to look more closely at the wounds that live beneath the pattern.
Mm-hmm. And I think actually, some people are distracted. The judgment serves as a distraction for them to really not look at their deep pains and traumas. Do you think some people are just not willing to heal their judgment because they don't want to experience that? They don't want to go into that?
Throughout the book, I describe judgment as an addictive pattern. Mm-hmm. We use judgment as a way of anesthetizing our deep-rooted wounds and pain and the discomfort that lives beneath those wounds. And so in that discomfort, we feel a feeling or something is triggered. Mm-hmm. When we have that trigger arise, our immediate response is, I don't want to feel that. No, thank you. Let me put that away. Let me push that down. And so we do lots of things to push away those triggers. We drink, we eat, we work, we have sex, people act out in many ways. But no one would ever consider judgment as one of the ways of avoiding their triggers. Or necessarily even see it as an addictive pattern. But the way that I describe an addictive pattern is using any form of substance or act to get out of your feelings and therefore becoming addicted to it because you're so afraid of feeling the trauma or the wound that lives beneath it. And so it's the same with judgment. Judgment is just another form of projecting out what we don't want to feel within. Okay. And that pattern becomes a very pervasive issue in our life.
Mm-hmm. I work with so many clients to help them overcome the beliefs that actually cause their harsh judgments. But when people first think about judgment, they think usually about judging others. But it's more than that. It's about their own self-judgment And you also address that in the book. So why is that self-judgment so damaging, Gabrielle?
Well, ultimately, I think when we're judging someone else, we're judging ourselves as well. Because whenever we're judging someone else, it's because we've judged ourselves. There's a feeling within us of inadequacy or a deep-rooted feeling of shame that we don't want to feel. So in order to not feel that judgment towards ourselves, we judge others. So it's all interconnected. It's all one and the same. And we feel that self-attack, and in efforts to avoid it, we put it onto somebody else.
So it's like a projection again.
Absolutely.
Gabrielle, I was really thrilled to see that you suggested emotional freedom techniques as a way for people to honor and to heal their wounds. I've used this tool for many years in my practice, and I've just seen profound healings from this. Can you tell us about your journey with EFT and how it's been so important in your own healing?
I love EFT so much. It saved me in so many ways. I found EFT originally through my very close friend, Nick Ortner, who is the founder of the Tapping Solution. And Nick and I used to share a stage where we continue to share a stage at Hay House events. And Nick would get on the stage and he would start doing this thing called tapping. And I was like, what is he doing? Like, what is that strange thing? But I would sit backstage. Usually I'd be speaking after Nick. So it was really interesting. I'd be sitting backstage and, you know, things, you get a little jittery before a talk or whatever. But I would follow along and I would just tap along while he was tapping, and I would borrow the benefits of the group. Watching Nick tap and seeing the rest of the group tap, and just whatever the person was tapping on, I would just continue to tap and I would get the benefit of it. And by the time I got onto stage, I was like so zen and relaxed. I really owed it all to Nick. I was like, whatever that guy's doing, it's working. And there came a point where it became, like, I kind of started to get this hit, like, I really want to know more about this, and I would love to teach this, because I can see how quickly people can have such beautiful results. And I also didn't want to have to personally sit in my pain anymore. And I wanted freedom. And I wanted to be able to offer my audience members, my readers, that same freedom. I didn't want people to have to sit in their pain anymore. And so then, by the grace of God, Nick sent me his book, The Tapping Solution. This was years ago when his book came out. And I read the book overnight, and it was just so easily, he was so well written and so easy to follow that within 24 hours I felt, I can do this for myself. I can do this. And so I started tapping regularly for myself and using the practice just throughout my personal spiritual practice. Then in 2016, I had an experience where I remembered a traumatic event from my childhood, which anyone listening out there, I just want to honor you and honor that experience. It's probably one of the more terrifying things that can happen because we get sent back into a memory that we had dissociated from. And in my case, I had dissociated from that memory for 30 years. So I was very terrified to recall that experience. And remembering that trauma put me into a really, really dark place for many, many months, and almost a year, really. And in that year, I just was like, okay, like all hands on deck. I need help. And at the time, I remember knowing that tapping was going to be one of the sources of my solution, in addition to EMDR and traditional therapy and all the other things that I did, because I was in a dark place that I was in. But I turned to tapping, and I started working with a beautiful private tapping coach called Lori Layden, who's a very close friend of mine. And Lori started coaching me through this experience. And coaching with Lori gave me the confidence to know, one, that I could heal my own trauma through this experience of tapping. And then it also taught me how to facilitate tapping as a teacher, really helped me get really grounded and safe and confident in my expression of these teachings. And so that's when I started really offering tapping in my workshops, in my books, in my talks. And it became a big part of my own personal practice because it gave me such profound relief. If anyone's dealing with trauma or remembering a trauma, I strongly recommend tapping as a great solution, really for anything, honestly. I tapped this morning on stress. My acid reflux went away. You know what I mean? Like it just works. It's just the most profound tool. Having the privilege of having somebody like Nick Ortner on my speed dial to just tap with Nick, like it's just such a blessing. It's the most incredible tool. And so when it came time to write the second step, it's like, okay, I'm asking the reader to honor a wound. That's a big thing. I'm asking this reader to look at their trauma and look at their wounds. I don't want to open that door without a tool that I know can help them really heal it. And so I put tapping in the book.
Wonderful. And EFT is such an amazing tool. In the book, you give us 6 steps for healing our relationship with judgment. And can you kind of speak to each of those steps or describe why each step is just so important and if we have to follow the steps as you laid them out?
Sure, absolutely. I do recommend you follow the steps as they are laid out. And once you've gone through the 6 steps, then you can come back and dabble a little bit. It can be a buffet later, but not right away. Follow the menu at first. So the first step is to witness your judgment without judgment, which means that we really take an audit of the judgmental patterns that are showing up for us. In that step, I have the reader ask themselves 4 questions. What or whom am I judging? How does it make me feel? Why do I feel justified in that judgment? That's a big question. Why do I feel justified? Because we need to honor the justification. It's a barrier, I think, in healing. So when we honor it, we can acknowledge it's there. Now, acknowledging that it's there allows it to be dissolved. And then the 4th question in that step is, what experience from my past may be triggering this judgment? Really important question, right? This helps us get into step 2, which is the tapping. So as you start to look more closely, and you want to witness that judgment without judgment, because you don't want to look at your judgment and then use it as another reason to judge yourself more, which is a very typical thing. I noticed that when I was writing the book, I started looking at my judgments and I was like, oh my God, I'm such a mess. How could I be a spiritual teacher? And the ultimate answer is, just to love myself through it. Be compassionate as I'm judging my judgments, not judge my judgments, as I'm witnessing my judgments. And it's a crucial part of the step.
Yeah, so acknowledging and then moving through it with compassion. And
exactly. And then that moves into the 2nd step, which is witness your judgment, which is honor the wound. And at this point, you've had the audit where you've been witnessing your judgments. You've really looked at the behavior, and you've had a nice opportunity to really take an inventory of it, at which point now you have an idea of some of the patterns that are behind it and some of the wounds that have been triggering it. Now it's time to tap. That's step 2. Let's honor the wounds through tapping. I put 3 tapping scripts in the book. I put tapping on judging someone else, tapping on judging yourself, and tapping on shame. Because really underneath all of the wounds is that fear of facing our shame.
Big fear.
Big one. We can't even put voice to it. We can't even put a name to it. But when we put a voice to it, that's when it can be released. So that's a big one. And then the 3rd step is to put love on the altar. This is a step about prayer. We're always daily putting a lot of the judgments on the altar. So we are judging our politicians, and we're judging our coworkers, and we're judging our family, we're judging our friends. And so let's see this metaphoric altar that is our life, and it's piled up with judgment. So instead of putting those judgments on the altar, this chapter is asking you to replace those judgments with prayers. And these prayers are prayers for acceptance, prayers for forgiveness, and prayers for releasing judgment. And as we start to replace those judgments with prayers, we begin to open up our consciousness to see through a different lens and create mental neural pathways that are different than the ones that we've been repeating. And that's a very important step. Prayer. I wouldn't write a book without prayers. I'm a prayer giver. I love to write prayers. So there's a lot of them in there. Then the 4th step is to see for the first time. And this step is designed to help you start to call on compassion, start to call on positive aspects of yourself or other people, so that you can start to begin to see through the lens of the present moment, see through the lens of what is good about someone. Look for the good, look for the God in someone, rather than the distorted shadows from the past. Now, this is a much easier step to do if it's someone where your friend pissed you off or you're angry about your upbringing, but, there's some real traumatic event. It can be a little bit harder to look for compassion or look for the good. And in that case, maybe the best you can do is just say, I'm going to find the good in this situation or this person by acknowledging that this discomfort has guided me on my spiritual path, or it's brought me to a greater sense of awareness of myself. So there's something that we look for so that we can reorganize our experience of the stories that we are placing upon others and ourselves. And then there's 2 more steps. There's the 5th step, which is to cut the cords. And that step is about really recognizing that when we have a judgment towards someone, there's an energy cord, an invisible energy cord that is attached between us and that other person. And that cord attachment is a hook. It's like, those relationships that you have where you've had a partner that you broke up with and you haven't seen them in a year, but you still feel so hooked in energetically.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Tapping can heal that kind of hook. Meditation can heal that kind of attachment. So we cut the cords through meditation. And in this chapter, I offer 6 meditations. I ask the reader to practice these meditations over a 6-day period. And each meditation is designed to cut the cords, practice forgiveness, acceptance, and alignment. And each meditation builds upon the next to really get you to a cleansing and a cord cutting. And then the final step is to bring your shadows to the light, and that is the step on forgiveness. This is a crucial step, and I kept it at the end because I felt like we had to do all the heavy lifting of the earlier chapters before we could get to the forgiveness step.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Forgiveness is very hard for people to reach sometimes. So, Gabrielle, what is the greatest wish for your new book? What is your greatest wish?
What a lovely question. Thank you for that beautiful question. My greatest wish for this book is that people will become more aware of their judgmental nature, use the tools to self-soothe, and ultimately feel more connected and free. And then the bigger wish is that on that individual level, if somebody has that experience on an individual level, it will have a ripple effect. So as I can see it in myself. So as I change and heal my judgments, I treat the people that work for me differently. I respond to my husband differently. Mm-hmm. I react differently in a business partnership. And then the people that are on the other side of that will react differently when they hang up the phone. And they'll treat whoever else they were speaking to for the rest of the day differently. So this becomes this ripple effect of a pattern that is beyond the addiction to judgment.
That's beautiful. So true. So true. Thank you so much, Gabrielle, for taking the time out to speak with us today.
My pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed that interview just as much as I did. I really urge everyone out there to get a copy of Gabby's new book, Judgment Detox, for themselves and for a friend or family member. Next time on Clarity, Power, Results, you'll learn practical steps to set and reach your goals for the new year. Plus, I'll tell you about my new online group coaching program I've designed to help you regain clarity and confidence, overcome your financial obstacles, and become your personal and professional best in 2018. Claim your complimentary assessment conversation. Together, we'll create a customized plan of action so you can become your personal and professional best. It's completely free with no obligations. Just email me at stephenie@stepheniefarrell.com. That's STEPHENIE @Stephenie Farrell, STEPHENIEFARRELL.com. Or call 416-523-7973 and just let me know you want your free personalized plan.